Our tale leads us to the fancy five-star Jiao Hotel in Yunqing, where a red-haired lady is taking a warm and cozy shower. Just then, a guy with bad intentions snatches her clothes, claiming he'll finally make her his own. Just as he was settled, a knock on the door broke through his quiet, signaling that his food had finally arrived. He then says he's on his way to pick up the order he just placed. To everyone's shock, the person standing there was none other than our hero, Yi-chun. As the lover pulls the door open, he freezes in shock to find the delivery guy standing there, only for the woman to pop up right behind him. The young woman, wrapped only in a towel, looks around in confusion and asks if he took her clothes. Yi-chun drops the bag of food to the floor, completely stunned by what he sees. Frustrated by the mess, the wealthy man begins yelling and calling names at our hero. As the scene gets chaotic, his wife yells for Connie, leaving him totally baffled. The lover then mocks him, revealing that her so-called useless husband was actually just a delivery guy, which sends Yi-chun into a flashback of the 3 years he cared for her while she never let him touch her. The young man asked her why, since he believed she was a woman of strong principles. She coldly admits she cheated on him because her husband is just a useless food delivery guy. Right after, the woman tells us that the other man is a young master who runs a huge company. She insists that only a man like him deserves her, not a poor man like her husband. The wealthy man then ordered Yi-chun to kneel and admit he was wrong about earning 5 stars. The main character's anger boiled over as he thought about how shameless people could be with so much money. Fang Xiao calms the woman down and tells her to keep going as before. With pure anger, our hero lunges at the man to make him stop while the lover cries out in pain. His wife stands between the wealthy man and his anger, daring her own husband to strike her. In a scary voice, the woman warns that she'll call security if he doesn't leave right now. Our hero, feeling let down by everything, just stares at her and calls out her name, Wang Jiao. Then Yi-chun suddenly remembers the day his grandfather showed him a picture of the woman he was supposed to marry. That was the very first moment he caught a glimpse of the woman he was about to marry. Once, he saw her as the perfect match for a life full of joy and calm. But now he wakes up to find it was just a dream, and he prays she won't regret the night they spent together. The young woman laughs as her useless husband walks away, saying that her only regret is ever having him. Outside, the delivery guy hops on a scooter and gets ready to ride away from that terrible spot. Then, a call from an unknown number rings out, and he answers right away. His master told him that his 3-year training as the Wang family's son-in-law was finally done. And with that, he stepped into the big, bustling world of business, ready to face his next challenge. The man announces he bought the Huaxin Group and made him chairman, and Yi-chun agrees. Right after, he asked to bring the young woman into the family, but the young man refused, saying she wasn't worthy. Then, our hero zooms away on his scooter, racing toward a fresh goal and a brand new life. Later that night, around 8 o'clock, Wang Jiao walks home and pushes the door open. She watches her husband pack his bags and wonders if he's running away because of something small. She says that since he gets to live in her home without paying, he has to keep his complaints to himself. Yi-chun erupted, screaming that he had swallowed every insult thrown at him and his family by her for the last 3 years. He yells that he took all the pain because he loved her, but from now on, he is done with this life. The young man stares at Wang Jiao with a look of firm resolve before finally asking for a divorce. The woman snaps at him, calling him useless and threatening that he'll lose both the apartment and the luxury car. With a cocky grin, our hero says he doesn't need any of that and is ready to let it all go. Frustrated, she nods to the split and grumbles that his grandfather tricked her into marrying a loser. Then, she brags about her wealthy family, and he says they should wrap up their divorce first thing the next morning. The young woman says no, because it's her grandmother's big 80th birthday, and she has to talk to her family first. The protagonist then tells her to fix it fast, because he will be waiting for her call. As he walks away, she yells that he'll soon regret it, and come crawling back to her in just a few days. While standing in the rain, a young man's phone rings to tell him his car is waiting for him. Right then, a fancy car rolled up right in front of him, looking like it had been waiting just for him to step out. An entire fleet of Rolls-Royces had arrived, and men in suits greeted him as young master. One of his subordinates tries to hand him an umbrella, but Yi-chun refuses the shelter and steps into the rain. The young master believes that letting the rain wash over him will help clear his mind. One of his workers gently drapes a heavy coat over his shoulders to keep him warm. Our hero, eyes set with new fire, shouts for everyone to go. A line of fancy cars starts rolling down the wet street, turning heads everywhere. Pedestrians on the sidewalk are scratching their heads, wondering why there's so many cars of that brand everywhere. From the floor above, his ex-wife hears the sound and starts to think that someone very important must have arrived. Sitting inside one of the cars, the hero stares straight ahead with a serious look fixed on what lies ahead. Everyone knows about wealthy families, yet the most mysterious of all is the Yi family, which holds billions in secrets and assets. As they reach the heliport, one of the men leads him toward a helicopter that's already waiting. From the moment they turn 3, the family's heirs are raised in a way that is far stricter and different from anyone else. To see who each one truly is, the family elders put them through special tests. In a memory from the past, his grandfather tells him they must marry into a lower-class family to complete their mission. Back then, the young man took the test gladly because he was already smitten with the girl. Now, with tears streaming down his face, he knows it's finally over and he has been welcomed home. Having finally found his way home, the hero is reunited with his family where he truly belongs. The next morning at Gao's grandmother's birthday party, everyone gathered to give her their best wishes. The head of the Wong family spots Yi-chun is missing and calls out to ask where he has gone. Her ex-wife is caught lying flat out, claiming her husband is probably at work. 2 of his own relatives laughed at him and made him feel ashamed for working as a food delivery guy. The old woman, furious that no one respects her, tells her granddaughter to rush the young man there right away. With no way out, the young woman decides to tell everyone that she and her husband are getting a divorce. The grandmother yells that her grandfather arranged the wedding and demands to know who gave their okay. Crying, she convinces herself that Yi-chun has found another woman and that she can't fight against her grandfather's wishes. The old lady is so shocked she screams that the young man is a monster for cheating on her granddaughter after everything. Then a cousin joked that it was no surprise, since she hadn't let him touch her in 3 years. The matriarch pays no mind to his words, insists he still cheated, and commands that he be brought in for punishment. Right away, the woman grabs her phone to call her ex-husband and do what her grandmother asked. Yi-chun's phone rang, and it was his ex-wife calling him. The young man picked up with a cold voice and asked what she wanted this time. The woman insists her grandmother wants him to go, but he refuses and hangs up. She's furious that her ex-husband hung up on her and can't believe his rude attitude. The young girl tells the matriarch the boy won't be coming, and the old lady gets so mad at his boldness that she flies into a rage. Right then, cousin Shaji stepped up to fetch the protagonist, and the grandmother gave her quick nod of approval. She watched in silence as her cousin went off to bring back her ex-husband. Grandma waits until everyone looks at her to make a big announcement to the family. She whispers that the Huashing Group now has a brand new chairman whose face no one in the world has ever seen. The old lady ends by saying the family's future hangs on how well they get along with this man. Right then, one of Yi-chun's men steps up to ask him about what he's been doing lately. The hero says that since this is his last day as a delivery guy, he'd rather watch his enemies from the shadows. While cruising in his fancy car, his ex-wife's cousin reaches out to the young man from a different place. The relative asks where he is, and the protagonist tells him exactly where he's hiding. With a wicked grin, the cousin tells him he's coming to meet him. A moment later, the man's car almost hits Yi-chun as he rides his scooter. The driver told the delivery guy to get in the car because the grandmother wanted to meet him. Our hero says no and warns that the divorce is coming, even if her grandmother begs him to stop. Shaji chuckles, telling Yi-chun the matriarch wants to punish him, so Yi-chun immediately asks why. The cousin claims he cheated and deserves punishment from the Wong family. Our hero is stunned and asks if his ex-wife really said that he cheated on her. With that, the young man bursts into laughter, prompting his annoyed cousin to ask what's so funny. The protagonist stares with cold eyes, wondering how someone like Wang Jiao could be so shameless and deceitful. Shaji jumps at the sudden shift and senses a strong, strange power radiating from the delivery guy. His relative asks him to jump into the car and kneel down so his grandmother can punish him. Fuming over the refusal, the cousin jumped out of the car and warned him he was going to beat him up. Shaji doesn't even think twice before diving at our hero to punch him right in the face. Yi-chun sidesteps the attacker with ease and taps the mirror on his scooter right into the guy's face. The hit lands just right, and the cousin screams in pain while a trickle of blood runs from his mouth. Furious, Shaji grabs a knife and declares he will carry out his family's justice by ending his life. The cousin lunges with a knife, but our hero moves faster and slips right out of the way. In a swift movement, he snatches the enemy's wrist and stops the blade from striking him. Snatching the chance, the protagonist lands a hard punch right on the cousin's face. Lying on the ground, the man hears Yi-chun tell him he's no longer the Wong family's dog to obey them. With a look of pure determination, our hero shouts that nobody will ever tell him what to do again. As the delivery guy snaps his helmet on and gets ready to go, the beaten cousin spits out threats at him. Outside the Manhwa Hotel, the matriarch's birthday party was still in full swing. As Mrs. Wong and her family waited in nervous silence, the news finally came that Shaji was back. As the car pulls up, the grandmother tells her grandson he did a great job following her instructions. To everyone's shock, the young man climbs out of the car, covered in bruises, and desperately shouts for his grandmother. Shocked, the grandmother asks who hurt her grandson, and he reveals it was Jo's useless husband. The young man's father looks so angry he screams that a worthless piece of trash dared to hurt his son. With his face puffed up like a balloon, the relative turns to the grandmother and asks if they should call the authorities. The matriarch turns it down, saying it would be a shame and that she'll take care of it like a family secret. She then asks her son to use his connections to give the young man a lesson and bring him back. Just half an hour later, Yi-chan finds himself trapped in a dark hallway by two massive men. The rough guys introduce themselves and tell the hero to follow them without asking a single question. The young man guesses they sent him a message from the Wong family, but he says no since today is his final day at work. With that, the goons fly into a rage and rush him to try and crush his hands. A few moments later, the quiet hall is filled only with the sounds of a fight and cries of pain. Soon, our hero stands calm and relieved that nothing about his job has changed. Suddenly, a goon stands up behind him, his eyes burning with rage as he prepares to strike. The man tries to sneak up from behind, but the hero slips away with a fast dodge. He is so carefree that he even takes a moment to make sure his food delivery arrived in one piece. The young man tells the goon there's only one delivery left, hops on a scooter, and zooms away, leaving the thug behind. Back at the fancy Manhwa Hotel, the Wong family's big party kept going with lots of fun. Ji-Chiang tells his mom that the men he hired got beaten up by the former son-in-law. The matriarch looks stunned and can't believe that useless man might actually know how to fight. Suddenly, a man shouts that the Tuanchuan delivery regional agent has arrived to offer his congratulations. Shaji's dad spots that this young man is his boss and quietly shares a fresh idea with his mom. The boss, Ma Kun, shows up with a fancy bottle of wine to celebrate the birthday girl's special day. Mrs. Wong says thank you, but she sees he's feeling down and gently asks what's wrong. The cousin's dad leans in and whispers a few words about Yi-chun right into his ear. Ma Kun is stunned to discover her granddaughter's fiancé cheated on her and hurt her grandson. Yet the man keeps lamenting his inability to stop while Ji-Chiang insists he is actually the perfect candidate for the role. It turns out the young man works as a delivery driver for his company, Tuanchuan Delivery. The boss grinned with a cruel smile, promising to take care of everything himself so they didn't need to worry. He pulls out his phone and orders a staff member to make up a fake reservation for the Manhwa Hotel. 15 minutes later, our hero rolled up on a scooter ready for his final delivery of the day. He picks up the phone to tell Mr. Ma that the order is waiting at the hotel entrance and asks him to come pick it up. At the other end of the phone, the boss ignores the guy and tells the delivery person to bring the package inside the hall. The young man tells the customer that they can't come in and must come to the door instead. Ma Kun glances at the matriarch, who nods and gives him the green light to move forward with his plan. The man threatened the hero to wait right at the hotel entrance. The moment Yi-chan hung up the phone, he realized he'd walked right into a trap. Just then, the boss and the whole Wong family walked toward the exit to meet him. As soon as Ma Kun arrived, he pointed and ordered the main character to take off his uniform and give him his badge. Confused, our hero frowns and asks what's going on. The cousin then tells us that this man is his top boss right at the company. Ma Kun threatens him by saying he can call the manager who hired him if he doesn't believe it. The protagonist's phone rings, and his manager delivers the shocking news that President May has just fired him. The young man is furious because the other man ruined what was supposed to be a perfect last day. With no other option, the delivery guy took off his jacket, just like the boss said. The ex-wife's dad and her cousin Ma Kun told Ma Kun to take it all off like a little dog. With that, our hero turns to the boss to ask if their contract is really up for renewal this year. Ma Kun is stunned and can't believe a simple delivery guy would know such information. Yi-chan smirks and tells him he's fired from the delivery job, but the man snaps back, shouting that he's too important to the big boss to ever get let go. Then the Wong family's grandmother steps in and shouts at the ex-son-in-law to get down on his knees. She points a finger at him, shouting that he cheated on her granddaughter and hit her grandson, and she promises to make him pay in front of everyone watching. The main character smiles and wonders why he should bow down to that old woman. Then the matriarch recalls the promise he made. If he did wrong, he would accept the family's punishment. Our hero stands by his words, proving he is a man of his word who will never turn back on a promise made. Feeling satisfied, the cousin's father commands them to fetch the Wong family's dragon ruler to deliver punishment. Next, A heavy golden dragon is dragged into the hall. The guests whisper that getting hit like that will hurt for days and could ruin a person's face. Without even a second thought, the man commands them to use that metal object to slap the young man 20 times across the face. Zhao's dad steps up and promises to punish the son-in-law himself for letting him down. Suddenly, a woman's voice cuts through the noise, telling everyone to leave the matter to her. Wang Jiao herself grabs the ruler and declares that since he is her husband, she will deliver the hit herself. With a wry grin, our hero retorts that she cheated on him, then blamed him, and now she's trying to hit him. She turns away while he laughs and boasts that he married a 1 in a million woman, only for her to step in and promise to be the one to hit him, if anyone dares, while her cousin snatches the object back and screams at the hero that he's a scoundrel. Shaji leaps forward and swings the golden ruler to strike the boy's face. Our hero moves with lightning speed, snatching the object from his attacker's grasp with a quick, agile twist. Yichun didn't hesitate for a single second. He swung the ruler hard and hit the cousin right in the face. Everyone in the room gasped when they saw the useless son-in-law hit the family's own grandson. The matriarch, furious at the scene he's making, yells at him and threatens to call the authorities to take him away. The young man faced the crowd and explained that he only fought back because Shaji had attacked him first. One of the guests then reminds him that he promised to take the family's punishment. He agrees, but insists he'll only take the punishment if he actually did something wrong. The grandmother then repeats her accusations that her granddaughter cheated and her grandson was assaulted. With that, Yichun drops a bombshell, revealing that she was the one who cheated with Feng Chao at the Jiahua Hotel and that there is proof to back it up. The guests begin whispering about how far the famous beauty from Yunqing has fallen from her pure reputation. Desperate, the young girl lies and says she met a wealthy man to talk about business and money. He then asked if doing business really meant he needed a hotel room and a bathrobe. Just as things get chaotic, a guest shouts that young Master Fong has just arrived. Zhao's lover steps into the hall, carrying a gift, and asks what is happening. She dashes up to him and begs him to promise that their meeting was strictly for business. The wealthy man hugs the woman he is lying to, claiming she only visited the hotel to drop off a document for him. With that, Feng Chao dares our hero to come up with proof, like videos or photos, to back up his claim. He then came up with a reason. Yichun was actually the delivery guy who brought him his food. The man kept on saying the young man's awful attitude was the reason he got a bad review. To show what he meant, he told Ma Kuan to look up the delivery records from last night. The boss pulls out his phone to show the 1-star review to everyone, proving that the story is true. The guests start judging the protagonist for being so petty that he seeks revenge just over a review. Our hero stands calm and asks his ex-wife why she won't tell him the real reason. The young woman replied in a cold voice that he wasn't focusing on his work and didn't know how to handle pressure. The young man laughs at his own foolish hope, wondering why he ever thought a woman like her could change his mind. He then turns to the matriarch and dares her to show any proof of the affair he claims happened. Mrs. Wang stood frozen with no words while the granddaughter turned her head away. With no proof to back them up, the grandmother brushes off the accusations but refuses to forgive anyone who hurt her grandson. Our hero stood his ground, claiming Shaji stabbed him and pointing to the cameras as proof. Grumbling in annoyance, the old woman snaps at him for finally standing up to her after 3 years of letting her family take care of him. Yichun says he's always tried to be respectful and promises to stay out of trouble if his cousin lets him be. With a serious look, the young man asks for just one thing, to finally end his marriage to Gao. With a laugh born of fury, the matriarch insists the marriage was her late husband's true wish and that she has always honored it. As she talks, the party guests start whispering about the family's trouble. The old woman wraps up by boasting that her granddaughter is so beautiful the young man isn't good enough for her. Enraged, the matriarch shouts that she refuses to obey her husband's orders and kicks Yichun out of the family. To celebrate, Zhao's father tells the waiter to bring drinks for everyone at the party. With that, the guests start cheering for the grandma and granddaughter on finally getting rid of that trash. The young woman's mother seizes the chance to admit that for 3 years, they slept apart and never even held hands. She yells to everyone that her daughter is still innocent, leaving the girl totally embarrassed. Our hero smirks and just watches everyone else get humiliated for no reason. He finally realizes his ex-wife is being treated like a product to be sold to whoever offers the most money. Our hero walks up to her and praises her for finally finding a man from her family's social standing. She tells him that if he kneels and begs, she might talk her grandmother into letting him stay for a little while longer. The young man wonders if she truly wants him to kneel after the way she betrayed him. He declares she is unworthy and then dumps the red wine over his ex-wife's head. The woman screams in shock that the awful man has gone crazy and is rising up against them. The grandmother freezes in shock at what her son-in-law just did, while her granddaughter keeps screaming in anger. The cousin told the grandmother that a simple divorce wasn't enough, and the old lady nodded in full agreement with her grandson. The matriarch tells the young man that he squandered her granddaughter's youth and hit her grandson, so he won't escape punishment. And with that, she calls on all the honored guests to put an end to the former son-in-law's life. The guests whisper about the family's plan, unsure if they should really get involved. Fong Chao steps in to back the family, promising that no hotel in the city will let the young man stay there. The wealthy man believes that by taking the woman, he'll also force the protagonist to beg on the ground. Not long after, the boss of a big restaurant chain decides to make our hero's life a living hell. Even the delivery boss, Ma Kuin, joins the boycott to make sure Yi-chin never works in delivery again. The karaoke chain's boss steps in, and our hero asks if anyone else wants to share their thoughts. The man repeats the threat, but the protagonist just laughs and asks if anyone else is brave enough to speak up. Hearing this, the cousin recalls that the young man is a skilled fighter and suggests someone stand in front of him as a bodyguard. The guests say there's no way to track every wealthy person in the city to stop this, and then someone laughs, pulling everyone's gaze toward a mysterious woman standing in the hall. As Shaji's father realizes the beautiful woman in red sitting on the sofa is President Kun and apologizes for his late greeting, no one else seems to know how she got there. Another guest is so captivated by the young woman that he asks the man to introduce him to her. The man scoffs at Ma Kun for not knowing who she is, and then proudly reveals that she comes from the mighty Huaxing Group. Kun Hongyan, the powerful and famous vice president who actually runs the big company and closes billion-dollar deals, steps into the spotlight while the chairman remains a mysterious figure. Our hero stares in shock when he realizes the woman standing there is actually the vice president of his own company. Jiao's father starts flattering her by claiming she's the only person in the city who knows all the wealthy people. The other guest nods, saying that with her beauty, every wealthy man in the city wants to know her. The woman teases them about making it sound like she's dating all the rich guys, and the man quickly apologizes. She started to believe that no woman as beautiful as her would ever reach the vice presidency unless she used some tricks to get there. With that, the man asks her to help them kill the young man in exchange for $70 million in funding. The president pulls a cigarette from her purse with a cold, silent look, and right away, several rich men scramble to light it for her using their fancy lighters. Instantly, wealthy men scramble forward to light her cigarette with their fancy lighters. But the woman brushes them aside, gives a tempting glance, and beckons our hero closer. The young man asks what for and wonders how interesting this vice president he has never seen before really is. The president smirked and asked the protagonist to light her cigarette. The guests stare in shock, wondering what could possibly make that pile of trash so special to her. Yi-chin ignores everyone else and coldly says he doesn't have a lighter. The smooth talkers are furious that he publicly turned down the goddess Yunqing's wealthy suitors. Hearing that, the woman stands up and clicks her heels as she walks toward the young man. She then asks for his name, but he plays it cool by pretending to be confused and asking which name she means. The president insists on his name, but the young man laughs because he already said it was Yi-chun. One man shouts at him to stop being rude, but the woman signals for him to be quiet. She steps up to him and offers him a second chance, explaining that because he shares the new chairman's last name, he deserves a shot. She leans in close to whisper her praise and offers him a job guarding her. The women at the party whisper about her protecting him and wonder if she really likes the young man. The ex-wife watches from afar, confused by what the powerful woman wants with Yi-chun. One of the men seizes the chance to ask the new chairman for his full name, noting that he is also a Yi. The president says the boss is so secretive that nobody, not even her, knows his real name. Suddenly, our hero realizes she doesn't know who he is, so she asks, "Where are you thinking we should go?" She promises to forgive him and hire him as a bodyguard for $200,000 a year if he kneels and apologizes to each member of the Wong family. The ex-wife tells her grandmother that the president is clearly picking a fight against them on purpose. The matriarch realizes the woman has climbed so high on the ladder so young because she truly knows how to play the game. With that, the old lady knows she hasn't offended anyone and can make any man fall for her. To everyone's shock, our hero flat out rejects the powerful woman's offer. His former wife stands completely stunned and silent at the nerve of the man who used to be her husband. The president couldn't believe her ears and screamed for her former son-in-law to say it again. Our hero stood serious and ready, stepping up to answer the woman in front of everyone. He presses in close to whisper that he will not accept her shameful offer. The unexpected touch makes the strong woman suddenly flustered and embarrassed. One man shouts at him, but the young boy stands his ground, explaining that he just stepped closer so she could hear him better. The woman is so mad at her son-in-law that she thinks he has no idea what's best for him and is really pushing his luck. Then she turns to the family matriarch and declares that she will help them take Yi Chen's life. As the guests cheer, his ex-wife warns him that he has no way to survive in the city anymore. The young boy wonders if the choice comes from her or the Huaxing group, and she tells him she speaks for both. Our hero then tells her that she's just the vice president and can't speak for the whole company. Guests whisper that he is right and tell her not to speak for the mysterious chairman. Feeling fed up, the woman finally decides to spill the truth and confess that the new chairman, Yi, is actually her secret lover. Our hero is so shocked he can't remember when he turned into that woman's lover. He presses her on whether she's too shy to admit it out loud, and she just doubles down on her lie. The guests knew that only a chairman matched her perfectly, making them a dream pair. Xiaoji's father cheers, declaring that with their romance now known, the financing deal is locked in. The president then asks everyone to keep quiet, since her boyfriend keeps his personal and professional lives separate. Our hero laughs as he sees the woman bragging and then making up an excuse to hide her lie. Fuming at the young man's mocking, the powerful woman turns to him and demands to know what he finds so funny. Yichen claims the chairman is amazing, but says she isn't pretty enough for him. She stammers that they really like each other and that he even rented an island just to ask her out. After so many lies, our hero decides it's not worth wasting time arguing with a liar. He turned to his ex-wife and asked her to finish up the divorce, and she said yes. Just as they are leaving, the cousin steps in to tell the young man to eat first, or he'll never be allowed back into the city. One of the men jokes to the cousin that watching him pull the young man's clothes is just like walking a dog. Our hero stares coldly at delivery boss Ma Kuan and decides he deserves a fair punishment. So he grabs his phone and calls one of his guys to get the name of Tianchuan Delivery's boss. The protagonist then tells him to reach out to the man and take away the Yunqing agency. All the people in the hallway stare in shock and confusion at the former son-in-law making that call. At the other end of the line, his subordinate confirms the news. The man is worth a staggering 50 billion. The young man agrees to meet the CEO another day and tells his employee to handle the arrangements. So with everything set in motion, he calmly hangs up his phone. An uncomfortable quiet spreads through the hallway as everyone watches the young man holding his phone. The cousin bursts out laughing and asks who he's pretending to be to get his job back. Ma Kuan just scoffs and tells the young man to save his bragging for another day since he isn't frightening anyone. Jiao's father calls him disgusting, mocking his grandfather as just a farmer and saying Jiao is living in a fantasy. President Kun just stands there with a serious face and says nothing as he watches the whole mess unfold. Suddenly, Ma Kuan's phone rings, and his face lights up with joy as he answers to find President Wu calling to renew the contract. But at the other end of the line, the man tells him that his agency qualification has officially been taken away. The delivery boss turns so pale from shock that he can't believe the news he just heard. He then glances at the president and the guests, hiding the truth so nobody will find out. Desperate, Ma Kuan tries to act calm and chats about the renewal fee, only to be told there are no agents left. The president waves him off, saying not to worry since they'll share a drink when they finally meet. Confused, the man says their cooperation will be pleasant while the president calls him crazy. After hanging up, the boss sinks into despair, wondering if Butler Fong has finally told the president what happened. The cousin walks up to ask about the renewal, and Ma Kuan quickly lies and says everything went perfectly. Xiaoji offers a toast to riches, and the man gulps down the entire glass in one go, tears streaming down his face. Our hero sees his cousin cheering on the man for finishing the drink at President Kun's, then asks why he's crying, and the hero lies that the liquid burned his throat. The hero dares him to stop acting and finally tell everyone the truth about his lost power. In a rage, the man shouts that even if what was said is true, it's not because of him a worthless piece of trash. Our hero smirks, says he won't make another enemy, and then calmly takes a sip of his tea. Xiaoji's father is screaming at him while the guests look on, wondering if the young man actually did what he said. Terrified, they begin to fear what will happen if their words reach the president. Jiao's mother then tells everyone that her useless son-in-law is just a country bumpkin who knows no important people at all. The guest nods in agreement, claiming that if he had power, he'd never have let himself be treated like a dog for 3 long years. The grandmother and the rest of the family agree that the whole thing is just nonsense and doesn't make any sense at all. With that, the security guards begin to lead Ma Kuan away, even as he complains that he brought a costly bottle of wine as a gift. Watching the scene, Our hero finally sees how greedy the Wong family is and realizes why his ex-wife cheated on him. The chef shouts that the feast is starting and calls everyone to the dining hall. My ex-wife wants us to eat now and wait until later for the divorce, so we don't ruin Grandma's party. So he waits until she's done eating before he finally says the divorce is happening. A cousin complains that her own spoon got dirty from touching the one in the trash. Our hero gazes at her soup and suddenly sees it's a papaya dish meant to make her chest bigger. Then he tells her she doesn't need the soup, and the annoyed relative asks what he meant. The young man tells her to forget it and offers the soup, but the young woman complains that he isn't even looking at her right. The cousin tells the grandmother that the young man shouldn't eat since he didn't even bring a birthday gift. The matriarch says we must keep our promise, but the granddaughter refuses since he didn't even bring a gift. He realizes that without the old woman pushing for the marriage, his mission would have failed a long time ago. With this being his final day there, he makes a call to ask someone to prepare a special gift for the birthday lady. His ex-wife catches the call and laughs him off, telling him the family won't take any of his junk. She tells him not to embarrass himself and says he can get someone to prepare a real gift for him. The young man ignores her to ask about the gift on the phone, leaving the woman furious at his boldness. 10 minutes later, a delivery man in a uniform shows up at the fancy hotel where the party is happening. The guard blocks the man's way, but the man insists he just wants to leave a gift. The delivery guy stops and asks who the birthday person is because he's got a special present to drop off. The cousin asks him, and the man says the Rolls-Royce owner paid him to deliver the gift. With that, Xiaoji realizes the gift is for his grandmother, so he smiles and asks the man to hand it to her. The relative pries the box open with a smug look, curious to see what's inside the package. But when he opens the box, his face falls, and he is absolutely stunned by what's inside. He claimed that his transparent ice jade bracelet was worth at least 10 million yuan. One guest is stunned, wondering who would dare send such an expensive gift through a regular delivery man. While everyone else makes a big fuss, our hero just eats his meal quietly at the table, watching it all from afar. The other guests whispered that it was the priciest gift they'd ever gotten and couldn't stop guessing who had sent it. Even the head of the Wong family stands speechless, admitting she has no clue who sent it. A cousin looks around and notes that every important family is there, wondering who is missing. With a confident smile, the young woman wonders if the gift might be from one of her admirers. The guests all agree that she is beautiful and draws in many wealthy young men from the city. Her father then bragged about his daughter's beauty and admitted that a wealthy young man must have sent the gift. President Kun smiles warmly at the man, happily praising his generous son-in-law who has already given such expensive gifts. As the scene unfolded, our hero wished he could guess it was just an admirer rather than admit it was him. After standing up, the young man asks his ex-wife Jiao if she's done eating. Now that she's done and the gift is delivered, he says it's time to finish up the divorce. The woman looks puzzled and wonders when he gave the gift, since she didn't see him do it. Our hero points to the jade bracelet and says, "That was the gift I gave." Jiao's father shouts at the former son-in-law, calling him shameless because he can't even afford that bracelet. The cousin complains that her useless husband is making the family look bad and insists the gift came from someone who admires her. Frustrated with everything going wrong, the ex-wife declares she's done with being married to him and insists we can move on. Our hero turns to the grandmother and tells her that after 3 years of being a family, the bracelet is his gift to her. The family elder snaps, "Shut up and get out, you're bringing shame to the Wong name." The cousin threatens him, telling him to crawl out of the city the moment the divorce papers are signed. The young man speaks calmly, saying that whether he stays or goes is his own choice and that no one will tell him what to do. A short while later, the couple walked out of the hotel just as a fancy car pulled up right in front of them. The young woman's father laughed in her face, telling her she wasn't good enough to ride in a BMW and that she should just take a bicycle instead. With a mean grin, he warns that he'll be waiting for them at the registry office and then speeds off. Unfazed, the protagonist calmly hails a taxi and tells the driver to take him right to his destination. Soon enough, he reaches the civil registry office to finally get things sorted out. Holding the divorce papers, the young man feels free after 3 years of being treated like a son-in-law living in his wife's home. Her ex-wife sneers at him, calling him a discarded son-in-law to make his shame even deeper. Our hero simply tells her to speak her mind, since he is done with her family forever. As he drives away in a taxi, a young woman screams insults at him, calling him useless and worthless trash. She then tells her lover Feng Chao to follow the car and check if he's actually leaving Yinqing. The wealthy man nods in agreement and hops into the taxi, confident that the young man is on his way to the train station. He explains that since his ex-husband can't support himself, he has no choice but to walk away. But the woman thinks about it and tells him his look makes her realize this isn't as easy as it seems. As the wealthy man trails behind, he suddenly notices that this path won't take him to the city's train station. The young woman asks if that path leads to the airport, but the man shakes his head and says it actually goes to the XX district. With that thought, the ex-wife starts to wonder if the young man is planning to break his promise and leave Yunqing. The lover gently tells her he's just searching for a hotel and promises he won't end up with a room. But to their surprise, the taxi pulls up right in front of the fancy Four-Seasons Sheetsea Lake Hotel. The wealthy man grew irritable and figured Hee-chan must have shown up just to apply for a job as a waiter. The woman grumbles that he's dismissing the Wong family's power and ignoring the danger they pose. The man grinned with malice, pulled out his phone to call the hotel manager, and told him to stop. On the phone, he tells his acquaintance not to hire the young man named Ichun who is looking for a job. But the answer he gets leaves him stunned, and his ex-wife asks what went wrong. He says the manager claimed no one showed up to apply, and he's confused about why the ex-husband is even there. Suddenly, the wealthy man hints that maybe you're really sleeping in that same hotel. The young woman can't make it work because she took all his money and one night their costs hit at least $8,000. Confused by everything, the man decides to ask the manager directly. The manager nodded in the hotel lobby and confirmed that Ichun had checked in and paid for 7 nights. The couple is stunned when they discover the total bill for their stay is more than $50,000. The lover figures out the total and questions the ex-wife if the young man didn't have some secret savings set aside. Just then, the receptionist dropped a bombshell. He hadn't booked a regular room, but the presidential suite. They stand frozen in shock at the $80,000 price tag, but the rich man just chuckles and asks if she's really using household money to pay for it. The ex-wife is completely shocked as her lover doubts whether she is really certain about his money. The wealthy man then shouts at the receptionist, who nods and confirms the total is $560,000. The employee also mentions that the young man left a 10,000 yuan tip, which totally surprises the young woman. Frustrated, the woman shouts at the worker, claiming the tip is for the Wong family, not her. The lover ignores this and presses for the source of the money, but the ex-wife insists it couldn't have come from regular expenses. She recalls how he looked after the grandmother's dog, but now she wonders if he might have stolen some antiques from the house instead. The wealthy man nods in agreement with the theory and asks the woman to call her family to see if anything is missing. Back at the Wanhao Hotel, the Wong family matriarch's birthday party was still in full swing. The guests whisper to each other, guessing who the mysterious person is that gave the gift. President Qin is starting to wonder why the donor hasn't shown up in a long time. She wonders why the mysterious guest, who was delayed by terrible traffic, hasn't shown up at the party yet. Suddenly, the woman starts to wonder if that gift really came from her former son-in-law. Right then, Jia's mother's phone rang, and she answered it to find it was her daughter. Over the phone, the young woman urges her mom to race to grandma's house and check if any antiques are gone. The mother freezes when her daughter blames her ex for stealing the family's precious heirlooms. President Qin hears them talking, lights up a cigarette, and sighs in relief that he's just a thief. With her business done, she stood up, waved goodbye to the matriarch, and was ready to go. Shaji's dad then reminds her about the money, but she assures him everything is taken care of. With the mysterious donor never showing up, the other guests begin to pack up and head for the door. The grandmother then asks the mother why her granddaughter didn't find out about the stolen money until the divorce was over. The mother tells us that her granddaughter thinks something was stolen because the ex-husband spent $600,000 on a fancy suit. The old woman of the Wong family, so angry at the young man's boldness, screams out his name. Then she tells some family members to rush home and look around while others stay put and wait for the donor to arrive. A little while later, a fancy car pulled up to the big, lonely Sixian family home. Inside, the cousin proposes breaking the group up to hunt down the stolen things faster. 20 minutes go by, and after checking one of the rooms, the young boy sighs in relief to find everything still there. The uncle adds that he found nothing missing, which proves the ex-son-in-law is innocent. This meant our hero hadn't taken a single thing from the Wong family. But Shaji lies to his uncle, claiming he needs to double-check everything to make sure nothing is gone. The cousin grinned with evil in his heart as he got ready to carry out his dark plan. He grabs a 5 million watch and decides that from that moment on, Ichun is the thief. The relative then screams desperately at his uncle, telling him that a very expensive watch is missing from the room. Stunned, they finally figured out how the young man managed to pay for the presidential suite. The uncle calls his mom to say his dad's expensive watch is gone, and she screams into the phone, ordering them to bring the young man back so she can punish him. The man then tells Shaji that the grandmother wants him to catch the ex-son-in-law and bring him right to her. Still scared of getting beaten again, the cousin groans that the fight hurt him so bad. He quickly invents a lie about needing to rush to the hospital and runs away, leaving his uncle all alone. With nowhere else to turn, the uncle calls his niece to check if she's still at the Sheetsea Lake Hotel. Then the scene shifts back to the fancy hotel entrance where everything started. Soon after, the young woman gets a call that her grandmother's 5 million watch is gone. Her lover asks her something, and she frantically thinks that her ex-husband stole from her family. She heads to the hotel desk and politely asks the receptionist for her ex-husband's room number. With a fierce look in her eyes, she declares she's going to drag the young man back for stealing the watch. Her lover watches her light up at the sight of her ex-husband and can't help wondering why she's so thrilled to see him. The wealthy man grabs her to stop her from causing a scene and urges her to just call the police to fix the problem. Feeling fed up with his attitude, the woman snaps that he's a coward and insists she'll handle it herself. She races to the door of the presidential suite and screams for the thief to open it. Our hero stands in the shower, washing the soap suds from his skin, but unable to wash away the feeling that the woman is still haunting him like a ghost. With no other option, he slips a towel around his shoulders, pushes the door open, and stares right at her. When she looked at her ex-husband's body, the girl turned bright red and couldn't speak a word. She's shocked to see Ichin's six-pack as he coldly asks what she wants from him. She thinks she should have made him walk around shirtless at home and blames him for taking the watch. He acts clueless while the ex-wife yells that grandma's missing watch must have been taken by him. She points to the room and explains that this is the only way for him to afford such a fancy suit. The young man marvels at her amazing family, insists he hasn't taken a single penny from them, and tells her to go. The young woman freezes in shock because he rarely called her Miss Wong, and she suddenly feels how far apart they've drifted. Just then, she remembered how he once held her dear, calling her his wife and goddess. Back in the present, she snaps at him, accusing him of bringing another woman into his room and demanding she leave because of it. She calls her crazy, reminds him they're already divorced, and threatens to get the hotel security guard. Furious, the young woman pulls out her phone and declares that while she once gave him a chance, she's now calling the police. She then warns him that stealing 5 million could land him at least 15 years behind bars. She yells that if he drops to his knees and says sorry right now, maybe she'll change her mind. Our hero wonders why loving someone feels so silly, then shuts the door behind him. She screams at the closed door, shouting for him to open it right now. Then she screams that she's called the cops, and he's going to jail soon. Back at the mansion, the grandmother is stunned to discover that her granddaughter had called the police. Her mother insists that the Wong family must handle their own business and keep outsiders out. The matriarch warns that he might just be doomed to rot behind bars for ruining their family name. 10 minutes later, 2 police officers show up and start looking for Miss Wong to ask her about the report. The lover is lying and claiming the ex-son-in-law stole a watch to buy a suit and pay for women. The officer then asks the receptionist to call the room and tell the suspect to come down. Noticing his silence, the woman guesses he must be scared and feel guilty. With that settled, the officers decide to head up to her room to see what's happening for themselves. When the officer knocks on the suite door, the young man in his robe opens it. The police chief steps forward to introduce himself and ask about the theft, but our hero quickly shakes his head, insisting he didn't take anything. The officer then shares how his past went poorly and he walked away with nothing after the divorce. With that, the officer asks him just where he found all the cash to buy such a fancy suit. With a calm look, the protagonist asks for a moment and turns to grab something from inside the room. He grabs a paper from the table and calmly reveals the stock transfer agreement, proving to everyone that he is now the new CEO of Huaxing Group. Then he slides his pricey diamond card across to the stunned cop. The younger officer leaned in to whisper a doubt to the chief about whether that fancy card was actually fake. So, the chief asks if they can pull up his info from the official records. The young man says he asked a colleague to hide his data, but he can let it out for a while. Then he calls a friend and asks them to make their profile visible to the system for just 10 minutes. A minute later, our hero tells the officers the search can begin, and the younger one pulls out his phone to check the Huaxing Group and verify the story. On the device's screen, Ichin's photo shows up with the title of CEO of the big tech company. Stunned, the police officers wonder if a skilled hacker might be behind this. Noticing they were suspicious, the protagonist admitted he didn't want to brag, but had no other choice. With that, he pulls up his bank account details right in front of them to prove he's telling the truth. The officers stand stunned with their mouths wide open after spotting more than 10 billion yuan sitting in his account. Our hero reveals that the cash on one card is worth more than the whole Wong family. He then asks them if, with all that cash, he really has to steal a simple watch. The police chief then asks why a wealthy young master would choose to marry into the Wong family. The young man says the wedding was arranged and begs them to keep his true identity a secret. The officers think the whole thing is weird, but they promise to keep young Master Ye's secret safe. Once all the trouble is fixed, they offer a sincere sorry for the mess and wave goodbye to our hero. 2 minutes later, in the lobby, the officer tells the ex-wife that Yi-chun didn't take the watch. The ex-wife won't believe him and yells, "If you didn't steal that money, then where did you get cash for the hotel?" She calls him a broke delivery guy, making the officers wonder if someone so poor could really have $10 billion in the bank. The chief warns that without proof like videos or photos, they can't take the young man into custody. The officer gives her a scolding for speaking against her ex-husband, but she stands up for herself by saying she would never have left him if he had been able to take care of things. The young officer is stunned, and the woman asks if her ex-husband finally regrets leaving her. The officer believes she will be the one crying over the billionaire CEO husband she threw away. Shifting the topic, the young girl then asks if any other woman was in her ex-husband's room. The police chief says Mr. Yu was all by himself in his room. She smiles with certainty, believing his pain proves he still loves her. As the police depart, the lover watches them go and wonders why they were so kind to the young man. Just then, her phone rings with a call from her cousin asking if the police had taken him in, only for her to explain that the authorities said there was no evidence, which is why he hadn't been arrested. At the other end of the phone, the cousin asks what proof they need to finally pin this on him. With a wicked grin, the relative shows off the watch to prove there's no evidence of the theft. So he decides to forge a sales receipt to make sure his enemy goes to jail. The woman hangs up the phone, lost in thought about the situation and her cousin Xiaoji's plan. She fears he might end up in jail and thinks back to the times he used to look after her, while her lover, confused by her quiet distance, just watches her without knowing what's on her mind. The wealthy man wraps his arms around her and invites her to spend the night at that fancy hotel. Enraged by the offer, she shoves him aside and calls him weak for failing to stand up to Yi-chun. She glares with anger, vowing that Yi-chun has ruined her night and she won't let him escape. Suddenly, a hotel worker told the rich man how beautiful the woman was, making him feel all awkward. Furious at the remark, the man grabs the employee and orders him to tell him the exact moment Yi-chun walks out. As the sun rose at 6 the next morning, our hero woke up and got ready for another day of work. As the reception staff stare in shock, the young man walks out of his room. Dressed in a sharp suit, he fills the room with his CEO presence and instantly wins the heart of a female employee. Right after that, the employee pulls out his phone to tell Mr. Cho that Yi-chun has just gone. One of the rich man's henchmen tails our hero's taxi and shouts that he's driving downtown. 20 minutes later, the young man walked up to the towering Huaxing Group building for work. He thinks about President Kun's words and wonders how she will act when she sees him today. While Yi-chun is over there, his ex-wife's lover sits in his own room, wondering exactly what Yi-chun is doing. He recalls the president's threat and believes the young man is seeking revenge against her for the humiliation she caused. He wears a nasty grin as he spots a chance to slip closer to the woman and make her happy. Just then, the strong president's phone rings, and she answers it without much excitement. At the other end of the line, the man introduces himself, and the woman realizes she met him at the birthday party. He then warns her that the Wang family's former son-in-law has traveled to her company to seek revenge. She tells him not to worry because the building is guarded, so he won't be able to get inside. But the wealthy man reveals that the young man has an access card and has already slipped past security without a hitch. The president is stunned by the news and can't figure out how the company card ended up in his hands. The man then claims he used the cash from the stolen watch to buy his way in from someone. The wealthy man calls the president, telling her she's beautiful and saying he's worried about her. The woman thanks him for the reminder and promises to send someone right away to check the office. The lover tries to offer his help, but the president cuts the call with zero hesitation. She then calls her secretary and asks the young woman to check the office for anyone who looks suspicious. About half an hour later, we find ourselves standing in front of the big Huaxing Group building. At the front desk, the security guard gave a cheerful good morning to Secretary Joe as he walked in for his shift. Joe Rongrong, who everyone thought was just an ordinary woman, turned out to be the personal secretary to the mighty President Kun. The guards agree she's stunning, but admit she can't hold a candle to the boss's own charm. When the secretary walked into the room, she jumped because a man was standing there, so she asked him how he got in. Our hero looks back at her with a cold, calm voice, asking who she is and why she is there. Then, the young woman steps forward and introduces herself as Joe Rongrong, the president's own personal secretary. The young man begins to wonder why a woman like Kun would hire such a stunning secretary. Then he guesses the president might prefer women, but a baffled secretary cuts him off mid-thought. Without wasting a second, Our hero steps forward and shows the world he is Yi Chun, the new boss of the Huaxing Group. The secretary stood, frozen in shock, unable to speak a word after learning the young man's true story. She begs for forgiveness, saying her boss told her about a suspicious stranger hanging around the place. Knowing the Wang family was tracking him, the protagonist quietly tells the employee to get back to work. He then tells the story of hearing the vice president is beautiful and wants to see her the moment she arrives. While in a restroom, the secretary reaches out to the president to tell her what's happening at the company. The woman is stunned to find out Chairman Yi is in the office and wants to see her right away. Without a second's thought, the president is already heading to her office to meet her new boss. With that, the woman floors the gas on her red sports car and rockets down the city streets. 10 minutes later, the woman walks into the building's lobby and hears a voice she knows. Her secretary was the first to greet her as she walked through the big building's door. The boss asks for the chairman, and the employee tells her he is waiting for her in his office. As she walked, she saw that many women had already arrived and couldn't help but wonder why. The secretary says everyone ran to catch a glimpse of the brand new CEO because he is so good-looking. With a curious and mocking smile, the powerful woman asks just how handsome he really is. The young woman lets out a sigh, claiming he is handsomer than any celebrity and looks to be about 23. Kun Hongying is shocked that she became a vice president at just 32, which is already very rare. Then she scolds the young women, telling them to behave professionally so she doesn't look bad. The secretary claimed that a CEO like him would be the perfect match for President Kun. She kept talking about how he praised her and maybe showed up early just to see her sooner. The woman smiles and boasts that she has never met a man she couldn't control. The other women agree, saying there's nothing the president can't handle. Once, a rich and powerful man was seen scrubbing her shoes like a small dog. The boss smirks and dabs on more red lipstick while everyone else watches with wide eyes, eager to copy her move. She promises to leave the door open so all can watch her tame the young man, and the excited women beg her to make him kneel and put on her shoes as usual. She believes that humiliating the chairman will prove to everyone that she is the one who truly runs the company. With that, the woman feels her spot in the company is getting even safer and waves him inside. She introduces herself and can't help thinking he looks as handsome as a Korean star, even from behind. The woman feels like she's seen him before and wonders why the new boss is so eager to meet her. The main character places the paper on the table and slowly turns around to finally look at her. The women at the door whisper and laugh, guessing that the young man will soon drop to one knee and call her his queen. To her shock, the man turns out to be Yi Chun, leaving the woman speechless when she sees him standing right there. The vice president is so shocked her legs won't hold her, so she drops to her knees on the office floor. The young women at the door are baffled to see the mighty president kneeling before the new boss. The office door stood wide open, letting anyone walking by see the crazy mess inside. The secretary froze in shock, realizing the man kneeling before her wasn't the chairman, but her own boss. Our hero looks down at the woman kneeling before him with a cold, superior stare. Suddenly, the women scream and run away when they realize they've been caught spying on everything. Meanwhile, the woman just lay there on the floor, frozen and unsure of what to do or how to react. He then asks why she is kneeling, and the young woman blames the Wang family for offending her boss. The woman bows her head, apologizes, and begs for forgiveness for everything she said at the party the day before. Then the young man steps closer, gently lifts her face with a soft touch, and looks into her eyes. He reminds her that yesterday, she told everyone they were lovers and asks if she remembers. Our hero scoops her onto his lap and asks her about the island she mentioned he rented to take her out. The woman, completely embarrassed and at a loss for words, just apologizes again. Looking at her, the protagonist smiles and gently tells her to get up from his lap. The protagonist asks the woman to pull the blinds shut because the employees would see it. He tells her that just yesterday, she was trying to cut off his choices, but now he's her new boss as chairman. The new CEO smirks with a challenging look and asks how she plans to stop him now. The vice president admits she was wrong and says she never thought he'd end up as the Wang family's live-in son-in-law. She even offers to get fired right then and vow to disappear so she won't bother him anymore. Our hero believes she isn't just any woman because she stays calm and takes charge without panicking. And then the young man surprises her by saying he isn't going to fire her at all. He said that even though she made him feel ashamed, she was the only one at the party who gave him away to get out. With tears in her eyes, she thanks him and promises to give her all to serve him. The young man tells her he can forgive her, but warns that anyone else who tries to ruin him will not be spared. He then calls out her first name and asks her to sort through all the details about his enemies. Right away, The employee says yes and feels like the business world of Yunqing is about to get turned upside down. Half an hour later, the woman walks back into the office and hands her boss all the answers he needed. Our hero reads the file and suddenly recalls how his ex-wife bragged about her lover's $10 billion family. The vice president tells us that while they used to have $10 billion, their assets are now only worth $3. She promises to shut down the Wong family's project so they can stop dreaming, but the protagonist insists that business is business and asks her to hand over the proposal anyway. The woman promises to grab the file herself, but the young man surprises her by offering to go with her instead. While inside, the wealthy man stands outside the building, worrying that the president might have already taken Yichin away. Just then, a woman walks up, realizes he's young Master Fong, but he has no clue who she is. She tries to jog his memory by telling him about the night they spent together at the bar. The wealthy man thought he must have been completely drunk to bring such a woman home, until he suddenly realized the truth. Seeing how useful the young woman could be, he hugs her, and she asks him to take her upstairs because Kun is in trouble. A minute later, the lover and the worker step off the elevator and reach the top floor where the bosses work. Suddenly, a man hears two women chatting about the president kneeling down to greet the new boss. He walks up to the president's secretary and asks where her boss is right now. He didn't even glance at the girl's question. He just walked right past her to find a boss. Without hesitation, the ex-wife's lover bursts through the office door. He bursts in on our hero and the vice president and yells that he's a shameless thief who stole his daughter. After the president asks who let the rich man inside, he turns his anger on the young man and claims he is there to take revenge. He smiles and tells the woman not to worry, because he's going to take out the trash himself. To the man's shock, President Chun suddenly slaps the intruder hard across the face. Furious, she yells at the man and demands to know who he thinks he is to call her that way. The rich man can't figure out her strange reaction and keeps wondering why nobody looks shocked to see the young man there. He then realizes the young man isn't seeking revenge, but has come to stand as her protector. The lover recalls the gossip and figures out it was Yi Chun who knelt to beg for the job. He laughed as he said the young man had woken up early to get ready and crawl over to be her little dog. The wealthy man told her she couldn't take it, reminding her of the promise to stop him from having any other choices. The secretary eavesdrops and is stunned to hear her boss actually threaten the chairman. Frustrated, the woman smacks the man's face again and screams that she never said that. With that, the boss orders his secretary to kick the man out and fire the guy who let him in. After security tosses the wealthy man out, he grumbles about the humiliation of being humiliated in front of his ex-son-in-law. He then threatens our hero, promising to send him to jail so he must live on the streets forever. Enraged, the ex-wife's lover storms toward his car to escape the scene as fast as he can. Sitting inside the car, the man mutters a curse at the president, claiming she only climbed to the top because of her looks. He vows that someday he will strike back and force her to kneel and beg for his pardon. With a smile on his face, the man decides he has to tell the Wong family about the young man's new job. An hour later, inside Shirshan Mansion, a voice gasped in shock at the young master's words. The wealthy man then tells the matriarchs that the former son-in-law became President Chun's personal bodyguard. The ex-wife and her family are stunned by the news and can't believe it's real. The lover also made it up, saying he heard from workers that Yi Chun had knelt and begged for the job. He realizes the woman has been watching the young man since the party, which is why she feels so sorry for him. Furious at the story, she shouts that her ex-husband knelt for another woman instead of for her. She remembers that during their 3 years of marriage, he never once knelt down for her. A cousin just laughed, telling her she's not charming enough to make a man kneel. The relative keeps bragging that if she married him, she'd make him wash her feet every single day. The ex-wife says she was way too good for him, but if she got another shot, she'd make him kneel every single time. She storms off to her grandma, furious that the president broke his promise and insisting they must take revenge. Suddenly, a sharp slap strikes the young woman's face, leaving her stunned by her grandmother's sudden action. The matriarch then yells at her granddaughter, reminding her that the $70 million deal is right in the woman's hands. Jiao's dad tells her she's jealous of President Chun because that woman is better at her job than she is. With that, the young woman shouts that since the family won't help, she'll head to Huaxing Group herself to sort out. Seeing the chaos, the matriarchs tell their son to call Qin Hongyan and fix everything. Over the phone, the old lady said that if she had known the woman was after Yi Chun, she would have given him up much sooner. She then calls her out for breaking her promise and insists on knowing why she did it. At the other end, the president apologizes and worries that if the old woman learned the truth, she'd have a heart attack. The matriarchs then give the young man as a gift, since he is nothing more than a live-in son-in-law to them. The old lady ignored the ex-son-in-law to ask about the $70 million deal. The woman says the chairman liked the idea, but wants to learn more before moving forward. Grateful, the grandmother tells her son the president will meet him in person, and they quickly settle on a time. The old lady then warns her son to impress the chairman and not to ruin everything. He wonders if they've already forgotten the theft now that the young man is President Chun's own man. The matriarch tells him to keep looking, because that proof will be useful to punish him or to negotiate with the woman. Right then, cousin Shaji rushes in and tells his grandmother that the young man sold the watch to a gangster. With a smile, the old lady teases that Ik-chun is just the president's dog and refuses to help. She then turns to the rest of the family and complains that the older ones are useless and the younger ones can't do anything right. The grandmother screams in rage at her granddaughter for letting her husband slip away and ruining her pretty face. With tears streaming down her face and her head held high in shame, the young girl sprints away as her mother desperately calls out to ask where she's going. Sitting inside her fancy car, she vows to show her ex-husband exactly how embarrassing he made her feel. A short while later, the woman shows up in the underground parking lot of the Huashing Group building. Sitting inside the car, the ex-wife is shocked to see a woman with purple hair walking toward them. To her shock, Yi-chun and Qin Hongyan walk side by side through the parking lot. Angry at the scoundrel who dresses so well after the divorce and laughs with another woman, the young woman storms out of the car and shouts that he is shameless for becoming the president's dog. The boss spots her and thinks, "Why is the proud Wang family princess here?" His ex-wife challenges him, saying he knelt for another woman but never did the same for her, and she demands to know why. She says she gave him plenty of chances, and if he had just asked nicely, he would still be part of the family. Frustrated, the young man challenges her nerve to ask why he didn't kneel. He then told her that she had cheated on him with Fong Chao in a hotel and still wanted him to ask for forgiveness. At the birthday party, the woman told him she'd give him another shot at life if he knelt, but he could have stayed just by asking her to. She keeps shouting that kneeling means the same thing and demands to know why he did it for someone else instead of for her. Our hero declares that getting down on one knee for a wife is noble, but doing so for a cheater is a shame. The young woman blames him for losing control and says she should have made him wash her feet from the start. Then, suddenly, a hand shoots out from nowhere and smacks the angry woman hard across the face. The president was the first to yell at her for cheating, yet she showed no shame at all. Stunned by the attack, the ex-wife demands to know how the other woman dares to hit her, but the attacker just stares back. With tears streaming down her face, the young woman shouts that the president stole her man and then beat her up. Our hero steps up to the boss and asks her to just let it go now that things have gotten so crazy. With a cold stare, the young man turns to his ex-wife and tells her that he is no longer hers. Then the young woman shouts that she'd never give away even a dog raised for 3 years and orders him to leave. She offers him $500,000, mistakenly believing the president gets paid only $200,000 a year. The president laughs off the offer, saying that even if she added another zero to the number, it still wouldn't be enough. The young woman stares in shock at the $5 million salary offer, but the couple just walks away without even looking at her. Then she grabs him and threatens him, claiming her cousin has proof that he sold the stolen watch. She asks him to become her personal protector and promises to get him out of jail. Our protagonist politely thanks her for the offer, but turns down the chance to become her bodyguard. He admits he can't guard her while she laughs with other men in hotels. Inside the car, the young man tells her that if her cousin has real proof, he's ready to take him to court. As the car zooms off, the young woman sprints after it, calling out that he can't just leave her behind. She's so angry at him for loving another woman that she wonders what's wrong with her own heart. The story moves us to 7th Street in Yujing, a famous slum where the poor and the powerful live right next to each other. Down in the underworld, everyone knows Brother Melon, the man who calls the chaos of the city. Suddenly, the ex-wife's cousin shows up and shouts for the famous and scary Brother Melon. The man with the ponytail and tattoos waves to young Master Wang when he shows up without warning. The relative steps up to the gangster with a black box in hand, claiming he's just there to strike a deal. He tears open the package to find a $5 million watch inside that he plans to sell for $4.5 million. The young man asks the man to say that a guy named Yi-chun sold him the watch. The gangster grinned as he realized this was the man who had beaten the young master before. The cousin agrees he can't stand being humiliated and insists the young man go to jail. The man turned down the offer because his boss warned him to stay out of family trouble. The cousin yells that Yi-chun is already divorced and demands to know why he must listen to Boss Liu. Suddenly, one of the bad guys gets mad and shouts that the man is actually Brother Melon's boss. The gangster says that the boss is his guiding star and that every word from him is a law he must follow. In a last-ditch effort to close the deal, the desperate relative throws the watch up for grabs at $4 million, no matter what it takes. But the man insists that because his boss treats him like a son, he must always listen to him. Then the cousin drops his price to $3 million, claiming he can still walk away with $2 million in pure profit. Just then, the gangster recalls his boss's warning never to turn his back on cash, so he takes the job without a second thought. Meanwhile, back in the car, our hero drives right beside the company's boss. He then tells the woman that she's no longer allowed to touch Wang Jiao without his permission. The young man says that hating her and loving her are just two sides of the same coin. The boss is amazed by the young master's sharp ideas and how far ahead he thinks. He looks good, has plenty of money, thinks for himself, and treats women with kindness and generosity. With that, the woman decides that since his ex-wife doesn't care for him, he's hers to claim. Afterward, they reach Jinji Temple, where the Wang family is getting ready to build their fancy new home. The president paints a picture of the spot, highlighting its gardens, a maple forest, and a natural hot spring. She then asks him if he will really hand the money over to the family after all the trouble they've been through. Our hero catches her off guard by revealing that the whole project was actually his idea from the start. He says that after the ex-wife's grandfather passed away, the average relatives started fighting over his money. So the young man built a plan to take control of the powerful families and grow his own strength right there. He told the idea to his ex-wife, who whispered it to her grandma, who then passed it on to her uncle. The president says the Wang family only wants boys, so the ex-wife can't take over the business. Our hero nods, admitting she has always felt pushed around and that the forced marriage just made her life much harder. With that, the young man declares that no matter what, her betrayal of him cannot be justified. Just as an autumn leaf drifted into her hair, he gently reached up to take it out. Holding a leaf in his hand, the young master asks his vice president to join him for a drink. Over in a city bar, a voice was raised in a desperate plea for a drink. It was the ex-wife, sitting at a bar with a friend, who was shouting for her to come drink. Song Hongi asks her friend why she's drinking during the day and who made her so angry. The young woman then complains that the disgusting Qin Hongyan slapped her just for insulting her ex-husband. The woman screams in anger, wondering what those two people really have for each other in the end. Her friend claims the ex-husband has become the president's pet, which is why she stood up for him. Her ex-wife defends herself by admitting she cheated just one time, claiming that these days, every beautiful woman does it. As the girl hears her friend, she spits out her drink and screams that she has cheated on him twice. Feeling annoyed, the woman tells him that since he never caught her in the act, he should just let it slide and keep quiet. She then complained that he refused to kneel for her, yet did it for the president, and she offered to pay him too. Her friend says she knows him well and can't understand how someone who loved her for 3 years could fall so easily for another. The ex-wife is so confused by the theory that she has no idea what her friend is trying to say in that story. She tells him he needs to prove his worth so he can ask her to marry him again someday. When she heard that, the woman was so shocked her eyes lit up with sudden understanding. With a confident smile, the ex-wife whispers to her friend that her silly ex-husband still loves her more than ever. Her friend then suggests she marry the wealthy man, but she complains that he doesn't care for her like Ichin does. With a glassy-eyed grin, she tells her ex-husband that he made her miserable, so now he gets to suffer just a little. The friend then wonders why the young man, who is alive and married, began making deliveries 6 months ago. Sleepy tells us that 6 months ago, when his family went traveling, he needed money to pay for her sickness. Just then, the woman's phone rang and her friend told her it was her cousin Xiaoji. The cousin called her from the phone and told her to head to the grandmother's house, saying he'd found proof that the watch had been sold. At the same time, Yichen's phone rings, and he realizes it is Wang Xiaoji calling. The relative tells our hero to head to grandma's house right away because he found proof of the crime. The protagonist says no because he's busy, but his cousin pushes him by saying the witness is already here. The young master, convinced he never sold that watch, is ready to settle the matter once and for all. After hanging up, he immediately calls his secretary, Joe, to ask if the employee can drive a car. Once confirmed, he asks the secretary to pick him up and drive him to the famous Shirshan mansion. As they drive, the secretary speeds the sleek car down Yanjing city streets. Sitting in the car, our hero struggles to sort out his mixed feelings about heading back to the Shirshan mansion. About half an hour later, they finally reach the grand gates of the wealthy Wang family, where the secretary steps out of the car in her fine dress to open the door for her boss. The grandmother and another relative gasp in surprise at the young woman's arrival and can't stop asking where the family's former son-in-law has gone. With a push of the door, the worker leads President Yi to their final stop. Our hero stepped out of the car and told the secretary to wait for him outside. His ex-wife and the matriarchs are stunned to find their former secretary driving his private car now. Then the cousin bursts out laughing and claims the guy is just putting on a show to impress the family. The cousin's mom nods along with her son and laughs at the whole act the ex-in-law is putting on. He then asks him how much he paid the secretary to pretend to be his private driver in front of them. As another cousin sneers at him as President Cheong's lapdog, the young man's heart sinks at how cruel and nasty his family really is. Just then, his ex-wife Wang Jiao showed up with a smug grin, watching the whole thing. She realizes her friend was right. He's doing all this just to impress her. Our hero doesn't care and tells his cousin to stop stalling and bring out the witness to the incident. With that, the protagonist follows his relative into the mansion and walks down a long red hallway. As they reach the room's door, two men holding baseball bats stood there with scary faces. The young man wonders what these thugs are doing there until one of them greets him, calling him Brother Yichun. Our hero doesn't recognize the man, who claims he sold him a watch for 5 million yuan. The cousin then mocks him, daring him to admit he sold the watch to the bad guy. Our hero grins, noting the witness fits the cousin's style, but Xiaoji screams that he's the one who took it. Then, the matriarch points out that he stole from the family, yet still has the audacity to argue with him about it. The young man speaks softly to the old woman, saying he only came to show that he never took the watch. Then the grandmother holds up the object and insists it must be real because it's a rare, special edition. Then the thug accuses him of selling the item just to pay for his fancy hotel room. With that, he asks him about the hotel money, and while the cousin thinks the former son-in-law has no defense, our hero says he just wanted to be treated normally, but was mocked instead. So, the young man pulls back his curtain and shows everyone that he is the boss of Huaxing Group. With a serious look on his face, he asks if being a billionaire isn't enough to change their minds. When they hear that, everyone in the hall starts laughing right in our hero's face. The cousin just rolls his eyes and says you sound like a movie star bragging about being the city's richest man. A female cousin suggests becoming his second wife if he truly takes the top job at the big group. The thug then yells at him to stop acting and kneel down so his grandmother and cousin can ask for forgiveness. His ex-wife argues that since they were married for 3 years, the family will keep him instead of sending him away. She says he can pay it back later, but first he has to kneel and admit he was wrong. Our hero says he did nothing wrong, and even if he did, the Wang family isn't good enough for him. The furious cousin's mother screams for the authorities to send the ex-son-in-law away for 10 years. The thug starts to panic, knowing that if the cops show up, their whole secret plan could blow up in their faces. So, he shouts that the man will end up on his knees no matter what, and tells his men to hold him tight as they grab his arms and force him to drop to the floor. Our hero stares with a cold look and says he is too important to make him kneel. Then he breaks free with ease, slamming a hard elbow into a henchman who screams in pain. Next, the young man lands a perfect punch straight to the face of the other man who was holding him. The leader of the thugs is shocked by his own strength and shouts for his men to chase him, but a tiny white dog suddenly appears barking and starts fleeing them all. Hua, Grandma's loyal dog, steps in front of Yichun to shield him from the thugs. Our hero scoops up the tiny dog, telling it he's looked after it for years, but the animal looks worried about him. He figured that even a dog knows who treats it right, which was more than he could say about some people there. Seeing that even the dog has sided with her ex-son-in-law, the matriarch orders a relative to take the animal back. With that, the young woman snatches up the noisy little pet while the protagonist watches it all happen. Then the family stares at him as his ex-mother-in-law offers him one final chance to kneel and admit he was wrong. Our hero answered that he wasn't worthy while the hired thugs surrounded him. Suddenly, the men turn angry and charge at him, but he quickly knocks one of them down with a punch. While fighting, he recalls that 4 years before his wedding, his family sent him to Syria for a year. Using his real fighting skills, he kicks another thug hard to prove they are just amateurs compared to him. To a man who has fought in real wars for years, this is just a game for kids. Before anyone could even blink, every thug was down in agony, while the young man stood tall and unharmed. Seeing what was happening, his cousin flew into a rage, lunged from behind, and grabbed him to hold him still. The relative then threatens him, vowing to make sure his hands will never be able to fight again. Just then, the thug leader stands up and says he's going to finish the young man off since he's already hurt his own guys. Yichun twists his elbow to break free from his cousin and gets ready for the next move. With eyes burning red, he unleashes a surge of raw power and shocks the men holding him. The whole family is scared, wondering how anyone could fight so terrifyingly well. Then the grandmother starts to wonder if her late husband knew about his special powers and pushed for the wedding because of them. His ex-wife thought about it, but doubted it was needed since the family has no enemies and stands on its own. The cousin's dad tells his brother he found a real gem and is glad he said no before. Everyone is stunned when he admits the grandfather actually wanted his daughter, not his niece, to marry Yi-chun. The man recalled turning her down back then because he thought the young fellow was just a country boy and his daughter wasn't ready yet. The cousin sneered at the ex-wife, pointing out that she ended up with the very man her sister had refused. Her sister keeps teasing her, saying she walked away from a bad situation while the other person gets to enjoy the good luck. He was shocked to find out this past was real, since he never knew it existed before. He remembers that 3 years ago, right after leaving the battlefield, all he wanted was love and a family. Back then, he loved her the moment he saw her and thought their lives together would last forever. Back in the present, he only wishes he and the other had parted on better terms. Without even pausing to think, the young man leaps forward and grabs the thug leader's hand who had just threatened him. With all his strength, he squeezes the man's hand so hard that the man screams in agony from the crushing pressure. With a furious glare, the young man demands to know who sent him to get framed. The thug is sweating buckets, but tries to look tough, shouting that he'll regret it if he keeps going. The cousin freaks out, knowing that if Yi-chun makes him spill the beans, he's done for. The hero then insists he never took anything and tells them to call the authorities if they have proof. With that, the young man snatches up his coat and turns to finally escape that terrible place. Seeing his old owner walk away, little dog Hua runs to catch up and begs not to be left behind. He grabs the animal and declares it's the only thing worth stealing. But while his cousin questions why they're just letting him go, the old man promises to handle it later. The relative steps up to the thugs to calm things down, but the leader grabs him and demands another $1 million to pay for his men's medical bills. The cousin nods and says money isn't an issue, as long as he gets to teach Yi-chun a lesson. The thug storms off, promising revenge for the humiliation and broken hands he just endured. At Huashing Group, our hero declares he'll join forces with the Wang family's real estate agency and demands to see their plans. So, his vice president nods in agreement and promises to tell them right away. The story moves us to the fancy Wang family home, where they get some big news. The ex-wife's uncle told the matriarchs that the president gave the money for the project, but he wants the ex-wife to show it off. So, the grandmother urges her son to make a great impression on President Yi, so they can build a partnership that lasts forever. At that moment, the ex-wife's cousin steps up to her father and, with a sweet voice, asks if she can go with him. The young woman claims the president is fresh-faced and dashing, unlike the usual boring bosses, but her cousin chimes in to say he's already tied up with President Xion. She tells him they aren't married and that, being younger and prettier, she can win him over. Her brother nods along with the plan, while the grandmother reminds her that truly great men are hard to find and that she should fight to win his heart. The matriarch gives her granddaughter the green light to meet President Yi, and the young woman is thrilled by the chance. Seeing this, the ex-wife gets annoyed that she came up with the idea first, so she decides to head to the meeting too. Her cousin taunts her by saying she's divorced and that the president would never pick a woman who has already been married. She keeps goading her grandma, promising that she'll finally beat the president in one way or another. The ex-wife feels wronged, thinking about how her grandmother always treats her unfairly while favoring her cousin. An hour later, the secretary tells her boss at the washing group that Mr. Wang and his daughter have arrived. The protagonist then asks the young woman to lead them to the reception room and have them wait there. Grinning mischievously, he also orders the employee to serve no tea at all to the two of them. While waiting in the room, the cousin tells her dad she hates the tight dress he made her wear. He tells her that his only goal is to marry the president, not just to have a quick fling. The daughter then thanks her father, promising to steal the president from Ms. Chin so she can marry him. After waiting more than 10 minutes without a single cup of tea, they started complaining and questioning how they were being treated. Then the young woman calls the secretary, asks for 2 cups of black tea, and the secretary says she'll bring them right over. Another 10 minutes tick by, and the cousin is already furious since the tea still hasn't shown up. Her father soothes her by telling her that once she is the president's wife, she'll have the power to fire the secretary. So the young woman calms her nerves, settles back into a graceful pose, and waits quietly for the president. After half an hour, she gets too tired of standing still and complains that holding such a proper pose is really hurting her. Her dad is upset that the president isn't taking their case seriously, making them wait a full hour. Just then, our hero pushed open the door to the reception room and stepped out to meet them. He spots the young lady slumped on the sofa and scolds her for being so rude in public. She sits up in surprise to see it's Yi-chun, and he compliments the dress she is wearing. The young woman told him the dress isn't for him because he's not even worthy of her cousin. Her dad steps in to ask what a bodyguard is doing there and where the president is. The young man realizes they still don't get it, so he says that if they're truly in this project, they should talk to him. The man yells at him, calling him a useless guard who can only fight and knows nothing about business. Frustrated by the situation, our hero declares that if no one wants to speak, he'll just walk away. When she sees this, the cousin calls him back to ask one last question before he leaves. She asks if he knows the lives of President Yi and President Qin, and he says he does. She steps right up to him, questioning just how close they've grown and whether they spend their nights together. He spots she loves to gossip, so he jumps at the chance to spread a fake rumor that they've broken up. The cousin and her dad stood frozen in shock as our hero just dropped the bombshell about the breakup. With that, the group celebrates the news, but the young man wonders why they're so happy about it. The girl sat back down again, looking like she owned the place with a smug grin on her face. She calls out his name over and over with 3 different versions, and the young man is puzzled that she's mixing them all up at once. Her father jokes that his boss is his future now, since his daughter is marrying the president. He gives a wicked grin and tells them this way the ex-son-in-law can connect with the family once again. The protagonist wonders if the president will really fall for her, but the young woman nods and says he will. The young woman keeps saying she thinks the president sent the fancy bracelet for the anniversary. Our hero chuckles at her own arrogance and, just to tease her, pretends the gift came from the president. The young woman jumps for joy at the confirmation, shouting that her gut feeling was right all along. She rushes to tell her dad that the president loves her, and the old man is so thrilled he can barely contain his joy. Her dad cheers because his future daughter will marry the president, and she promises to tell her grandma the good news. The protagonist watches the scene with disgust, thinking how unpleasant that family is and how much they care about looking perfect. The girl then asks where the president is, and the boy tells her he is in a meeting with some guests. She grumbles about the long wait, but he tells her the guests are just a father and daughter trying to hit on the boss. Furious, the young woman yells that the other is shameless and demands to know where they are so she can go over there. Her father tries to calm her down, warning her not to act on a whim and risk ruining her first meeting with the president. The young man asks them to wait until the boss is free, then he turns away. 5 minutes later, the secretary arrived to say that President Yi had to rush away for something very urgent. When the news broke, the father and daughter stood frozen in shock, unable to make sense of what had just happened. The man wondered if he'd return in the afternoon, but the woman said she didn't know and asked them to go. Feeling let down, they walk out of the building while the dad calls the matriarch to confirm the gift has been given. Then the story leaps back to the fancy family home, where everyone is gathered. The ex-wife asks what's happening, and the cousin replies with big news for everyone. She acts like she's better than everyone else and says that President Yi is the one who sent the $10 million bracelet. The ex-wife is shocked, realizing she was wrong all along and that it couldn't have been Yi-chan. A family member then asks how this counts as good news, since the 2 presidents are lovers. Then the uncle explains that the 2 presidents had gone their separate ways and that the presents were mailed at different times. With that, the cousin bragged that the president must have sent the gift to grandma because of her. The matriarch nods, saying she always knew the admiral was actually running Washington. She promises her grandmother that she will befriend the president and make the family name great again. The ex-wife asks where she got that news, and the cousin admits it came from her own useless ex-husband. So the ex-wife says she'll head to the company that afternoon to sort out the contract herself. Then the cousin stops her and, with a mocking grin, asks her to drive for her that afternoon. Furious, the ex-wife screams that she's way too busy to act as his driver. Furious from the shame, she throws the door shut and storms out, leaving everyone inside in her wake. Inside the car, she speeds away with her heart pounding from pure rage over everything that just happened. The young woman can only vent her frustration by complaining and speeding up, letting all her anger fuel her driving. By doing this, she loses control of the car and crashes hard into a tree on the side of the road. She cried into the steering wheel, blaming Yi-chan for making her face such shame. Returning to the washing group, we find a towering building where our hero now leads as its president. As he sits at his desk, his phone suddenly rings, and to his shock, it's his ex-wife. He picks up the phone and hears a young woman screaming at the other end, furious and telling him she despises him. With a weary look, the young man asks what happened next while thinking about her little one. But the woman screams that he ruined everything by telling the truth and humiliating her in front of the whole family. He quietly insisted he was telling the truth, but they just wouldn't believe him. She grumbles that everyone now thinks the president favors her cousin, leaving her with no place in the family. The young man then points her toward her lover, the young master of the Fong family, and asks about him. The young woman says it just doesn't compare because the other guy isn't even the boss of his company and isn't on the same level at all. Hearing this, the hero wonders if he should feel happy or sad about being compared to others. Then she snaps, screaming that the other guy is 10,000 times better and that she has to clean up his mess. Thinking she's a fool, the young man says he's busy and will hang up if that's all she wanted. She stops him in his tracks, asking him to wait because she called specifically to request his help with something. Our hero looks stern and asks what his ex-wife wants from him this time. She tells him she doesn't want her cousin to end up with the president, and he asks her why. She whispers that she'll put a laxative in her tea or rip her dress, and he says he'll help her make it happen. She calls him arrogant for thinking he can easily stop the meeting with the president. He snaps, tells her to believe it or not, and hangs up, leaving her furious. By 2 p.m., the cousin returns to the washing group to meet with President Yi. The secretary waves her away to go home, but the young woman presses him on where he has been hiding. Then the employee lied, claiming the president found her so stunning he couldn't focus. The young woman beamed at the compliment and couldn't believe her ears when she asked if the president really called her beautiful. She nods and says that he follows her videos and watches her content all the time. She tells him to let someone else take care of the contract and that he can ask her out whenever he wants. As she waves goodbye, the cousin slides a wad of cash into the secretary's hand as a thank you. Clutching the cash in her palm, she asks the worker to snap a photo of President Yi for her. The secretary gently shakes her head, explaining that she doesn't have any pictures of the boss. She whispers that he is very handsome and her age, which makes the young woman even more excited. As the young woman walked away, beaming with joy, the secretary sighed, wondering how silly and foolish she looks in comparison. Next, we travel to the wild nights of Manchine Country Tea, a strange and lively city. There, a man named Lu sits quietly with a drink when a rough-looking man called Brother Melon finds him. The henchman walks up to his boss and tells him he's got into trouble in the city and needs his help. When Master Lu heard the story, he flew into a rage, smashed a glass against his own head, and yelled at him to be an idiot. With blood running down his face, the man begs his boss to punish him for being useless. The boss puffs on a cigar and says the world has changed, so fighting won't fix anything anymore. He explained that this is why he left the city 2 years ago to run his business in poorer countries. After the henchman begs to gather 100 men to take revenge on the young man and his brothers, the boss ignores him and instead gets a call revealing that everything he has achieved is actually owed to a man named Elder Fawn. When he dials the old man, the henchman is stunned to discover that the voice on the other end belongs to his master's legendary boss. He promised to return in just a few days, but the old man whispers that he's already in the city, sending the man into a rush of excitement. The henchman, thrilled by the news, begs his boss to let him meet the great master, only to get scolded by Master Lu, who says a useless man like him isn't worthy of standing before the elder. So the boss made up his mind to head to the city to pay his respects and finally settle things with the young man. The thug cheers with glee, finally ready to take his long-awaited revenge. While at the Wong house, the ex-wife's uncle notices the president looks really interested in her. He tells his son that the next day, he will meet the president to finish the deal. The cousin gave a sly grin and said he was going to get rid of that useless guy the next day anyway. The next day in Yunqing, we arrive at the massive, fancy home of the famous Elder Fawn. Master Lu walks up to his old master and bows deeply to show his respect. The elder tells him he's finally the boss and doesn't have to bow anymore. The man tells him he only made it here because of him, then asks why he suddenly came back. The older man then tells us that the old master sent him to aid the third young master in his quest. The gang boss is stunned to find a young master right there in the city, with a boss who is a famous figure around the world. The old man speaks with heavy gravity, warning him that if his men bother him, they will pay a steep price. Terrified, the man asks what the young master looks like so he won't accidentally insult him. The man doesn't say a word. Instead, he just points to his personal assistant to take care of things. Next, the assistant displays a picture of the third young master. Much to everyone's shock, it is Yi-chun. He learns that the young man has been in the city for 3 years and plans to stay for another year or two to finish his mission. When asked why he's back, he says he just came to bail out one of his guys who got in deep. The older man then repeats the warning, telling him to do whatever he wants as long as he doesn't get in the way. Once everything was sorted out, the older man invited him to play a game of chess to see if he had gotten better. Back at the washing group, Cousin Shaji groans after waiting 2 hours and rushes off to find Yi-chun, right as our hero's phone rings with a call from his cousin. 5 minutes later, inside the reception room, a relative asks what he wants and where the president is.